that CTA, CTM, and CRA positions are really starting to pick back up. So I think that, we should be positive. That could be a good signal. I'm not entirely sure what to make of it, but I think that's good news all around. So from the site level to the CRO level to the vendor level, maybe it's a good signal. Hey, we'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it. Do you think that? So there's this book I keep pumping. By the way, shout out to Kelvin Peak and Sandra. And Kelvin says you might have Do Not Track enabled in your browser. Maybe that's what's going on. Anyways, Sovereign Individual. There is a part in here which I'm on. I'm about 50% through the book. This is a clean copy I'm going to send you guys, but on my Kindle, I'm halfway through. It's talking about globalization. So there's a the law has always, like the industrial age, which we're coming out of, the machines were kind of like, they call them stupid machines or dumb machines. Like almost anyone can run them. Like you can basically get hired at a factory, learn the machine, and then like be put on the assembly line the next day. Whereas now with like highly skilled roles, right, it takes longer than that to train. I mean, anyone who's looking for a coordinator, Lee being a perfect example, it takes 3 months to just have a halfway decent coordinator. About a year in, they start separating themselves, and I would consider them trained. The information age is leveling the playing field because you used to only have to compete with local market. Now you're competing with international market, global market. And my eyes were wide open when I went to Mexico City earlier this year and I saw PPD, Eli Lilly, Cineos, IKEVIA, all these hungry people working there, educated, competing for the same jobs that a lot of the administrators, payment analysts, study startup specialists are here. And we've interviewed Jen Pages recently, who recently resigned from Icon, I believe, as a project manager to start her own consulting firm. And she said on her last podcast, before she announced she's resigning and starting her own thing, shout out to Jen Pages, by the way, that a lot of the employees here in the States have gotten complacent with their work. And they thought it was okay. I mean, it's all good until it's not, right? And then the global market, brand new entrants that you never had to compete with, start competing. So I do hope that the uptick in hiring is here to stay, but I
Robert
don't know.
beats the hell out of his keyboard. That's all I got to say. Sorry.
Yeah, no, Robert's a beast on those things. You should see his emails when he replies back to people. That is what a
I'm curious,
recruiter
Robert.
told me.
I'm curious. Are your fingertips calloused? I'm sorry, Dan. I'm truly not trying to change the topic here, but it's like
You you would think I'm a guitarist.
Wait a minute, Chris Sauber. I have asked you for an invite. Can we connect? Says LinkedIn user. LinkedIn
No,
user number 5 is.
yeah. There's a lot of anonymous LinkedIn users tonight.
Identify yourselves. Papers, please.
Yeah. Just when in doubt, put your first name first. But man, I don't want to speak for Chris Sauberg.
Chris doesn't connect with anyone.
Yeah,
yes,
I got really lucky.
Robert had the bag.
Chris is Mr. Market,
and he doesn't beg.
And I had to also pay him a lot of money. Like, yeah.
Okay, so to this point, which another LinkedIn user, and this LinkedIn user, Sandra Warren. This LinkedIn user, I don't know who it is. And this LinkedIn user is the one I'm referring to now. That's what a recruiter told me today. They see things are looking better.
So I have a question to Robert about that. So you're saying that CTMs and CRAs are being hired. Do you know what the competition's like? Is it similar to what it's always been when the economy's been good, or is it a lot of people competing for one or two positions? Because that really is what dictates whether or not the market's improving. What's the competition like? As Dan pointed out too.
Yeah, I think it's the latter, Chris. I think it's a lot of people, competing for positions, but I think just the notion that they're opening up and
Sure, that
becoming available.
some are becoming available. Sure, that's
Yeah,
an
and that,
improvement.
that's an improvement. So we take what we can get, I think. But there's a lot of folks out there who are willing to take a step back just because they need work. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I read some pretty heart wrenching posts on LinkedIn where you have director level, 20 plus years, multiple degrees, in cell and gene therapy, and they're posting eviction notices,
And Darshan
So
said a similar story last time we went Guru After
yeah,
Dark with
and this particular individual, by the way, is checking his or her ego at the door, and even looking at customer service jobs, just kind of like anything at this point to get food on the table and to make ends meet. So I don't
Robert,
know.
what skill set do you need? Because Chris and I have kind of always been like, you eat what you catch. Chris used to work for me for just a few years, but after a few short years, we basically were business partners since. So
Mhm.
we're kind of disconnected from the job market, right? We're
Yep.
on the other side at the site level. How, like, are we close to where skill set, like, is there a specific skill set you need to not depend on a paycheck? What percentage do you think of LinkedIn that you connect, like your network, let's just say your network, what you see in your news feed every day,
Mhm.
what percentage of those connections would be successful going out on their own? More than they would think, or less than they would think?
Ah, man, that's a tough question,
I
Dan.
know.
And I
Well,
don't
we
want
ask
to.
them.
I know, and I don't want to. I mean, I
Would you like?
value my network, and I think it's all about mindset and how hard you want it. I think anybody can do what they want to do when it comes down to it, So, but the truth, in my opinion, because you asked the question, I have to answer it. Um, I think it depends on where that individual is coming from, and that will dictate whether they're successful or not. Because you kind of like when you talk about skill set, Dan. I'm not formally trained in any sort of business background at all,
Right. No, you
but
were
yet,
formally schooled. You went to med
yeah,
school.
formally
You
schooled,
finished
right?
med school. Then you went
So
to work for CROs, then sponsors. But you've been employee until recently when you started doing consulting, right?
yeah,
And that
and then I
transition that you made, how many people in your network do you think could make that successfully?
Well, before he answers that question, right? There's a risk to both, right? If you're employed, you could be fired any day, right? You walk in the door, hey, we're letting you go today for whatever reason. And if you're self-employed, maybe you can't find the work. I mean, there's a risk to either, right? There's benefits to both as well, right? It's what do you pick, and I think that dictates to these people what choice they make, right? Do I want to be self-employed, or do I feel more confident being employed?
yeah, and that's why I do both. Quite
Sure.
frankly, right?
How many people? I think that's the answer. I
Yeah.
think let's just hold that thought. Miriam, thank you so much. Is the future of research international? I think international is a huge part of it. I think the future of research is global, and
Mm,
international is definitely part of that.
see, I
Chris
disagree with that.
disagrees.
I
Go
do.
ahead, Chris. This after dark, man. You can
Sure.
disagree.
Uh, the reason I disagree is because of the FDA, right? America funds research for the entire world for the most part, and by far and away. Um, France, right? They have a conglomerate, the government that re, that always debates or argues with the pharmaceutical companies what they're willing to pay. And you can take any drug; it's a tenth of what's paid here in America. So the fact that America pays for the rest of the world in terms of research and development, and the FDA is the
Subsidized.
right, and the FDA is the governing body. I mean, sure, it could go worldwide, but it would really depend on the FDA and how they regulate.
But the infrastructure, the moving pieces, the workforce, I'm telling you guys, when I went to Mexico City, it was eye-opening. Like they can do the same thing someone in North Carolina can do
But
for a
take
tenth
India,
of the cost, a fifth
no,
of the cost.
and no doubt. But take India for example. They were on the FDA's blacklist for about 15 years, right? So there was
Yep.
no research
Yep.
done for the FDA in India, and
Right.
there's other countries currently on such a list.
And there
So
always will be.
you have to be in good standing with the FDA, whatever country you are,
Yeah.
if you want to do research that's going to be profitable in the long run. And that's what business is, and that's what pharmaceutical companies are. They're a business, so they intend to be profitable.
Yeah.
I think it's increasingly going to be global. The workforce, the
No, no
sponsors,
doubt,
the
no doubt.
sponsors are not like in our foreseeable future still going to be Japan, Europe, U.S. Where else are they coming from? We used to have some Indian sponsors.
Well,
I
there
actually
still are.
honestly try to stay away from.
Dr. Reddy's a big one.
Yeah, Dr. Reddy's Lab, Sun Pharma. I actually try to stay away from them. They usually try to lowball on those budgets. Ashley Margot. Wow. Ash, this
Yo.
is somebody. She works for a sponsor, so I'm not going to get into too much. But I think Ashley's got the
But she
skill
loves
set.
that sponsor.
She loves it. Yeah, she's got the skill set to do it. I think a lot of people have the skill set or are closer than they think to going out on their own. It's just a matter of networking, which most people are not good at, and it's always going to be 10 times more than you think for how many leads you need to land a deal. Oh, like how close were we, guys? Twice.
Sure.
I mean, mega,
on
yeah.
on like big projects, right?
Yeah.
We were really close.
Well,
if we didn't know any better, we would have
But
put that in the bank
Dan,
already.
in our defense, I think, and I hope those people that, engaged us are watching this, because we, in a sense, really, I think you, Chris, and I decided our own fate, because if we really wanted those projects, we
Yeah.
would have them,
Yeah.
right?
We would
But
have
I
had
think
at least one of them, I think.
yeah, for sure. And we made a conscious decision to, this is not good for us for various reasons. So,
Yeah.
but again, I think the skill set is important, and you kind of have to have this leap of faith. You have to believe in yourself, and just go for it. And listen, everybody here, Dan, Chris, myself, I'm sure we could all talk about our failures, but what most people see is our successes.
failures. What's that?
Exactly.
Chris
You
has
know?
none.
Chris, well, it's Chris Sauber we're talking here. I mean,
The
my gosh,
legendary.
the legendary Chris Sauber, for God's
All right,
sakes.
sure.
But I'm just saying, in the context of what type of skill set and how many people would be successful, and you have to be. You can't rely on a single contract. You can't rely on one big whale. You've got to cast a wide net, and you've got to be very, very generalist in a sort of in
You're
speaking.
preaching to Dan's heart.
Yeah, exactly.
I've
That's
been
his
saying
word.
this since like
Yeah,
2015. Generally,
yeah,
I've just from what I observed myself.
yeah.
I came in, hey, learn how to be a coordinator in psychiatric trials. That's pretty specialist. Then from that, you develop like the core skills, but then you got to constantly learn new stuff, because what happens when psych dries up? It does dry up. And okay, well, does that mean you're going to stop working or stop having income? No, you should be learning new things. You should be able to pivot. Right
Right,
now,
but
psych is
Dan,
busy again. That's what's keeping you this last 2 months. If it wasn't for psych, we wouldn't be screening patients right now, because we have studies that are on either screenings over for non-psych stuff, or in startup, like hasn't started yet, for respiratory. So summer would have been a cold summer for us if it wasn't for psych. But because of that past skill set, I knew to go back to it when I need to. And June, July, August, all that's been keeping us busy is depression studies. Like that's it.
So
yeah.
I was actually thinking about you in a way today, Dan. I was thinking about this generalist kind of perspective. Do you not think at though times you must focus on something? Why I'm bringing this up is because we're so diversified into so many different things, you and I in particular,
Yeah.
that I think some things are lacking the attention they need.
Yeah.
Because we're too diversified,
We're
right?
too diverse.
Too
Exactly.
generalized.
Yes.
So wouldn't you say there's times to focus on something? Or
Absolutely. When the wave is big,
Yeah.
when the fire is hot. General people misunderstand when I say generalist. It means to be a specialist in many things. To have a general
It also
breadth
means
of knowledge.
to when you are thinking about going out on your own, right, and being a consultant, a service provider, you have to be able to offer services that are in a wide variety of range. So you have to cater to vendors, and within the umbrella of vendors, tech vendors, startup vendors, service providers, CROs, and sites. That's what I think Dan means in the context of being a generalist, being able to serve multiple stakeholders. Because if you're going to be a consultant and go
Yep.
out and just think that you're going to get, I'm going to advise CROs, I'm going to advise a sponsor.
Yeah.
That's just not going to happen.
One of Charlie Munger's mental models is to a man with a hammer, everything's a nail. So you got to have a wider tool belt. You got to have more tools in that tool belt. Otherwise, if all you have is a hammer, I mean, you're looking to hammer everything in, even though you need like a screwdriver here, or you need a
Right.
chainsaw. So that's what I mean by generalist. You have more tools in your tool belt, basically. You're still gonna be a specialist when you're focusing, and that's the part where we lack is we in some of our businesses we need to delegate more and we need to like allocate funds to having someone hyper focus on one vertical while we go pursue other businesses in other areas.
And Dan, let me add one other thing for
Mhm.
Guru Nation. You may not think you have the skill set because you never acted in the capacity of a certain role or interacted with some sort of stakeholder that you may think, well, how can I advise or consult with a vendor? I go back and reevaluate that thought that you don't believe in the fact that you have this skill set to offer a service.
but don't you think that's innate, right? I
It
mean,
is innate, but Chris, the point is I'm trying to make here is that you people in this industry most have cross collaborated across many different groups, whether it's
sure.
at the site level, sponsor level, vendor level, CRO level, and can likely figure out based on their current skill set how they could assist or advise or consult a potential client that engages that person.
No
So what I'm
doubt.
saying is don't cut yourself out of the market or out of a potential opportunity because you think you can't succeed. I just had a conversation with, one of our viewers right now. They're actively here, and highly encouraged her to kind of go in with what your strengths are, and don't sell yourself short because you haven't actually done this particular task. It doesn't mean you can't do it, right? You have people within your network, you have a support system you can lean on, and you can kind of figure it out even though you haven't done it. And I think that's the same for whatever you're being engaged. So if you're going to go out on your own and you're going to want to try and be successful, you have to have this mentality. You can't be looking for the needle in the haystack and say, well, I can only do this, or because I only do this well. I mean, Chris, Dan, it speaks to your point. Look how diversified the two of you are. It doesn't mean that you are great at every one of your businesses. Some businesses are better than others, more successful than others. But the point is, you still are doing it and you know where you could pick it up to make it better. It's no different than a person who is an entrepreneur
Mhm.
wanting to be an entrepreneur.
It
I mean,
gives you
Dan,
options.
I mean, look, I'll give it publicly right here. You are the reason I went out and became some sort of entrepreneurial version of myself, right? I literally called you. I'm like, should I do this? And you're like, absolutely.
I saw it in you, no
Well,
brainer, man.
well,
Like
You
to me, it
know,
was a no brainer.
so I'm curious. I think the psychology behind it is fear, right? I think most
it
people are
is.
they fear what they don't know, right? They don't
Right.
realize I can do this, right? And it's just fear that holds them back. Would you say
But
that was your reason, Robert?
I'd say fear and kind of the unknown,
Yeah,
really, right?
fear of the
How do
unknown.
I how do I invoice? How do I do bookkeeping? How is this going to
Exactly.
impact my taxes? Like, but then when you start, that's what you hire people for. And you kind of have to check the greed at the door as well and kind of say, you know what, this is what I need to hire people for,
No,
and you get a bookkeeper, you get a CPA, and you
completely
get
agree.
advisors, and you have to just take that leap of faith. But Chris, you're right. It is that fear of the unknown.
Now, but that fear sometimes makes sense. So, and I'm not trying to be mean to anybody, but at least probably a quarter of all people should not be entrepreneurs. They're just not going to succeed. I'm just being honest, right? So you have to.
So what about those people, Chris, would
You have to
make
be
them not
realistic
succeed?
with yourself. You have to be
Yeah, what?
realistic with yourself.
But Chris, identify
what are
those
the qualities?
characteristics.
Yeah, what are the qualities?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a good question. I'm just telling you. I know when I speak to people.
You know it when you see it, but like
Yeah.
from all the hundreds of conversations we've had just this year alone, what are some of the, like,
I don't know,
if
Dan,
you
what do you
could
think?
distill
What would
some
you
of
say?
it? Inability to be flexible is like number one, like wanting to do it your way. The market doesn't care how you want to do it.
Too rigid.
Yeah, exactly.
Too rigid. I think that's a big part of it, because I'm sitting here thinking about all the people I think of when I speak to them.
I have a PhD. I want to do it my way. I should have this because of my education.
Yeah.
This is a problem. I hate it. Everyone I talk to hates it.
And this has to happen.
The market doesn't care what you or any of your friends
has to happen for me to be successful, and this is how it's going to work. No flexibility.
Yeah, zero flexibility. Whereas when I've been doing this my whole adult career, and you just learn to take the punches. We make bad decisions too, like
all the time.
A lot. Hopefully less now than before, but I mean, in my 20s during the Great Recession, I expanded into that like stupidly, really stupid. It almost
actually
ended
worked
my.
out. Yeah, but it all actually worked out in the long run.
It worked out. I got lucky. You had a lot to do with it, but like it could have gone the other way. And if I would have had kids, who knows? I may not have had that kind of appetite at that time. Like I might have had to suck it up and go work for IQVIA. Yikes! Can you imagine that?
That would have been a nightmare for Dan.
I don't know. Shout out to that man. I would have probably worked my way up to do some cool shit. Ashley Margot.
Let's be
Brady
honest.
Pearson. Dan Fancy Lamps Fair.
Let's be honest here. You have no intention on being an employee.
Zero. For the right company, if I want to learn something,
sure,
and it's the right time, like for example, the next phase of my career, eventually I want to get into biotech. I also want to get into tech, period, as it pertains to clinical research. And I want to get into venture capital, right?
Sure,
so I would suck it up. Yeah,
sure.
I would suck it up and work for one of those firms if I felt it would position my skill set.
Makes sense.
Right? And become a specialist, become a generalist.
And you could humble yourself to do such.
Yeah.
It's very hard, and I don't mean any disrespect by that word, humble, because it is difficult when you've been self-employed to say, okay, I'll take orders now.
I don't think I could work for just anyone, though. That would have to come in. I talked to Lana about this the other day. Lana, who works for us.
Mm-hmm.
Lana is an entrepreneur herself. She's an intrapreneur now. Her mom owns restaurants, and she grew up running her mom's restaurants. Mm-hmm. So she understands, like, as a business owner, what I want. It makes her a very good employee. And she said, I don't think I could work for just anyone. And I think I would be the same. Like, I could work for someone. I couldn't work for a middle manager who's just trying to protect their career outcomes.
You could work for somebody you felt you were learning from. I could see that.
Yeah, and I think
if you're just straight taking orders, do this, Dan, do this now. I'm not going to teach you how.
Nah, Dan said he would drive Uber before he would work for somebody.
Before a CRO, yeah. No, but I would work for a venture capital firm. I think that's something in my future I see possibly happening. So yeah, I would suck it up and work for a PE firm, VC firm, a biotech.
Funny.
I think I can do that.
It's funny because I will never work for somebody else again. It's funny that Dan says that when I don't give off that kind of I don't think.
Yeah, I wouldn't say.
Aura.
I'm not saying I'm a lifelong employee at that company. I'm
I
there a
don't think I
couple
would.
years and I'm
I
out.
think I would retire before.
What are you talking about? I'm gonna place an Instacart order, and Dan's gonna show up at my
I'll
door with
deliver
the
it.
bags. Okay.
Hey man, I'm here. I got the whiskey, I got the tequila, the Don Julio,
Which is all good, by the way.
the 1942 Kelvin Peak. Actually, self-taught. You do what you need to do to risk manage all options to ensure you win. There is no loyalty anymore with the employee or employer.
That depends.
Wow, we got a lot of we got to get to these comments.
That,
Hold
It,
on.
that,
yeah, it
that comment
depends.
Really
depends.
active.
That comment depends.
LinkedIn user,
I believe that depends a
identify
lot on the
yourself.
employer. There's employees that'll be loyal if the employer's loyal to them. I believe.
That is right.
It's
That
a
is
two-way
right.
street, 100%.
100%.
But I think somebody, I think Kelvin just made a comment about people want to be part of something where they make a real impact and are appreciated no matter the challenge. That's where smaller sites have the major advantage versus bigger. But that statement Kelvin makes is applicable to sponsors. It's applicable to CROs.
Sure.
It's applicable to vendors. It's applicable to whatever, even in sites.
Smaller
So
sites, yeah.
you don't want to be a number. Like if you're just looked at as a number and they want to milk you for every hour you're worth and over allocate you and completely,
you know what kills it?
And unappreciated.
You know
and
what
you're not
kills
appreciated.
it? Middle
Right.
managers. Like middle management will kill it. In our site, Yuma Clinical Trials, we already have a middle management layer. It's Katie Welch. Now, I'm training her step by step. Like this is, you don't want to piss off employees. You want to like lead by serving first. But there's bigger companies where that middle management layer is basically like survival of the fittest, and they are not doing these things to like nurture their employees and lead by serving. It's cutthroat. Like they are taught, hey, protect your salary at all costs. Forget the shareholders, forget the owners, protect your middle management. The wrong kind of middle management kills all kinds of companies, all sizes too, small, big, doesn't matter. The DNA stems from the top, guys. We have a lot. These
Shout out
are
to the
insane.
East Coast coming up on 11 p.m. and those who are tuning in from the East Coast. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
11
amazing.
p.m. for you East Coast elitists. They don't know any other time zone, by the way. People on the East Coast do not learn Pacific time. Forget it. Central.
Forget Arizona. Forget that's
Arizona. Even I don't know, and I live here. Like what time
likewise,
zone we're in.
Likewise.
Who else? What happened to Mexico? I think everyone should go visit Mexico City and Colombia for what's happening, specifically at the CRO level.
I think Mexico's still there.
Yeah, Mexico is still around.
Oh, okay.
I think they mean in the context of research.
I was making a joke. I know. I was making a
Look,
joke.
same time zone is a powerful thing. Same time zone, same or better skill sets, you could argue, at a fifth of the cost. That's what's happening to Mexico and to Latin America.
Fifth though, it's probably a little more.
I don't know, Dan. I'm running a study, setting up a study in Panama.
Oh, you are.
It is no bargain. Like it is.
Well, who's the parent company though? Is it U.S. or Panamanian?
It's. I don't want to give. I can't disclose too many details about this. But what I'm saying
paying
is,
in Bitcoin. Just Bitcoin is universal.
So no, I don't disagree. It's close, but it's got to be less, Robert. It's got to be at least 20% less.
I mean,
depends who owns it, Chris.
That's the reason
there's arbitrage now.
Sure, but we've seen budgets from Mexico, site budgets, and they're definitely less than U.S. budgets. And I currently work for some Puerto Rican sites. Same deal. They get paid about 75% of what U.S. sites get paid in Puerto Rico.
I mean, you're probably right. 20% is probably the right name or number, I should say. Excuse me. But still, like, there's kind of a sticker shock when you go into, Latin America and you look and you're like, wow, like this is, and quite frankly, there's procedures that are similar that are offered in America, that are a fraction of the price. And really, You go to these areas because the data is accepted by the regulatory bodies and they uphold the ICH GCP standards and they're very above reproach, which is what you want. But I'm just saying it's not as much of a bargain as one would expect it to be. Just want to leave it at that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, 1/5 maybe it's hyperbole. I didn't ask them their salaries. It would have been rude, but
I mean, but to Chris's point, I mean, I think like there's no doubt United States is going to. I mean, and to some degree, even Europe, any of the EU countries is going to be really on par with the U.S. in terms of costing. Everything else is going to be.
And I think all of Latin America, you have to work in research. You have to have a science-based background to be a CRA, to be a coordinator. You have to have a science degree. Like you got to go to college, get a science degree. That's not the case here in the U.S.
No, isn't it? I thought it was even more specific than that. I thought it was medicine, right?
It might even be medicine. Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you guys think that impacts quality?
I mean, you would think that it's better quality if they have medical background.
I don't know.
But is that the case, right?
So
time will tell. We will see.
Well, let's take some examples we're aware of here in the United States, right? Hiring foreign educated medical doctors, right?
Yeah.
Is the quality better when they're hired as a coordinator?
Yeah.
See, I don't think it necessarily is. I think it depends on the person. Still depends
on the
skills.
The soft skills is the variable. That's what you're talking about. But if soft skills are equal, they're better.
Okay, sure. But the problem is you have a lot of them that have an ego.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do that, right?
But that's soft skill. But if everyone is like that, if everyone's like that, should be no ego.
Yeah.
That's why there's that discrepancy here. 1.5 years since I've worked. Any advice, guys?
As what?
That's a lot.
Yeah, as what though?
In research.
Yeah, as what?
But as what? What role? What role has this person
CRA, project manager, what? Because I mean, there's a vast difference there, right?
LinkedIn user,
coordinator,
please
I would hope
info.
you could easily get not maybe easily, but could get another job, right? Especially if you're in an area where there's research being done by sites.
Gig economy. This leads us to the next question or comment. Kelvin, I believe we are steadily moving towards a gig economy because this is where I was going to go with this answer, where work will increasingly shift. Yeah, Robert's banging away over there.
I'm laughing at his comment. I mean, I'm laughing at both. His hammer toe fingers.
I mean, I don't even know what you guys see. I really don't even understand how you hear this. It makes no sense. There's got to be some kind of setting. It's not me.
All right, this is the comment. I'm glad Kelvin brought this up because I would have gone here next. Gig economy. Reid Hoffman. We brought this up last time. The founder of LinkedIn, a very influential person, VC founder, entrepreneur. He says by 2034, I think it was the majority of the workforce in the U.S. will be gig workers.
I don't know if I agree with that, but I understand where he's coming from.
I wouldn't disagree with that. The Reid Hoffman has been right many times on a bunch of things.
Sure, no doubt.
And he puts his money where his mouth is too. Like I disagree with him politically, but when it comes to like trends and tech stuff, he's pretty spot on.
I've heard a number of people say that. CNBC, I've heard a couple of people say this. I'm just not sure I agree with it, but go on.
Well, but his comment and the gig economy concept relates to this last comment from, I don't know who. 1.5 years since I last worked. We are in a gig economy. In this book, Sovereign Individual.
But wait. Let's address that real quick. So if you're in a gig economy and you're talking, let's say this person's a coordinator or CRA, that'd be probably, no, I guess both would be kind of doable. But as a coordinator, that means you would be employed for one study, right? Like some sponsors do this. They send you out to work at a site for one study.
Sites are different in that sense. So coordinators and CRAs are not in this conversation. Those are still full-time employees.
Sure, but I would say a lot of positions, if not the majority of positions, are similar. Why would you want to? So, what's one of the biggest pitfalls in being an employer is having to retrain staff, right? So, if you're an
Right.
employer, you don't want to be constantly
And that leads us
rotating.
to the next question. We'll get to you, Miriam.
You don't want to constantly be rotating through employees. It's
Right.
actually
Right.
it's actually a negative for your.
Yes, gig economy is not for, in my opinion, it's not for the CRCs and the CRAs, at least in a 2024 world. Maybe in a 2034 world, but not in a 2024 world. But what we are already seeing in a 2024 world is people like this who have been 1.5 years since I've worked, presumably somebody with research experience, they need to join the gig economy. And the skill set is not the same. So again, I keep referencing this book. Yeah, Chris, Robert, what? What did I say wrong?
I'm
Let's
pointing at
go.
Robert to his last comment, but no, you're referencing the book.
What
I'm
comment are you
listening.
talking about?
I gotta send you guys this book, right? These two books are for you guys. Listen, as we are in the information age, right? The output, not everyone's output is equal. When we were in the industrial age, everyone who worked an assembly line basically had the same output.
Yeah, so long as they
In
were
the
there and doing as they were
information,
supposed to.
correct. In the information age, results may vary, and inequality gap is going to increase. Meaning, you, me, Robert, everyone else watching who owns a business, we would rather overpay someone who gets disproportionate results than underpay someone who's not producing.
But the 80-20
All of
rule,
us,
80-20 rule applies to employees.
but not anymore. That's actually in this book too. The
Is
80
it?
20 rule is from the industrial age.
No, I think it's still
Information
true.
age,
I
it's
think
going
it's
to be
still true.
higher.
But you still have people that will outwork everybody else,
That's right.
right?
And if those people enter gig economy like Robert, right? Robert probably, I don't want to ask him his salary, but he probably makes, and not just him, anyone else who's went out on their own consulting. Once you build up your pipeline of business, you're making more than what you made at IKEA or Icon.
Well,
100. Oh yeah. I mean,
As
it's
long
not
as you're
even.
producing.
Yeah, it's not
sure.
even close. Yeah, it's not even comparable. Even
I
after my
mean,
expenses and overhead, 100%.
yeah, we
That's
do
right.
we know a CRA that was a contract CRA that made close to $500,000 one year. I don't know if you remember this, Dan. And this was in 2016. This is long before
Shanae,
$500,000 is not worth anything. Yes, exactly.
did she buy a purple Benz? Shout out to Tiffany.
Oh, you gotta throw her under the bus like that.
Nah,
Okay.
she's talked about that on my podcast.
Oh, is she okay?
Yeah.
So, I mean, all she did was work, right? But you tell another CRA, what do you mean $500,000 a year? That's not even possible, right? It's like,
It's
no,
not
actually,
possible.
it's
That's what
actually
they'll
is
tell you.
possible. Yeah, it
Yes.
actually is possible.
And why? Because
You have to be
employers are
self-employed.
willing to overpay for disproportionate results. We're in a new era.
They're
It's
not
no
going to do that for an
longer.
employee, right? You're
They
never going to
won't
be
do
good
it
as
for
an
an
employee.
employee. That's right. That's right. But what do you do when you're 1.5 years out of work? You're
You
not an
start.
employee anymore.
Well,
Well,
right.
let's
You
let's have a
start
little more
doing.
information. Maybe she's 1.5 years
No,
unemployed.
she already answered. She already
Oh, she
answered,
did.
Chris. Yeah,
I
she was an APM, an associate project manager.
Man, we
You
are
know, and
behind on these.
yeah, we're
Comments.
behind, but
Well, Dan's
you
showing the
know,
last one, the
Hold on.
only one I know.
Let's start from the bottom up now. We're so behind.
isn't
Lee
that a
says, I'll
song?
offer a 3-month. Lee's somebody who gets it, guys. The Lee
Yeah, but she's probably
SOS
not looking to
advocate.
take that, right?
I'll offer a 3-month contract to a coordinator if someone just wants to ride out the year.
I think actually this individual, I think she would take it. She would have to
Well, there you go. If you're
relocate.
close to Phoenix,
Yeah.
we'll hook you up with
Or
Lee.
even if you're not, 1.5 years, you can walk over there faster than that. The gig,
I mean, right?
yeah, the gig economy works according to Lee because it's entirely incentive-based pay, which can be extremely hard to do as an employer. Yep.
Well,
Incentives work. This goes back to this comment. Let's jump around.
and
See, ADHD is a skill here.
I certainly mean no disrespect, but if I had been unemployed for a year and a half, I'd take a newspaper job, right? Like chucking newspapers at the door.
Chris,
what are
yeah.
those things called?
Chris, hold on.
Saying,
They don't do that.
yeah.
Chris, they don't do that anymore, man.
I understand, but my point is
Chris
you
would
gotta-
do what it takes. Like he would
Chris
do
would be the milkman.
He would like literally be like a dog walker if he had
I don't know if I'd be
one of those.
I don't know if I'd be up for being employed, but yeah, dog walker, right? Self-employed doing something.
I mean, I might even talk to Lee and be like, "Hey, Lee, how many? I might even go over there for. You need a couple days a week, maybe."
And
I
this
can
is
float
why
it,
the
you know?
gig economy. Look, there's people like Lee that exist more than you think. They come out of the woodwork after
But he's
dark.
not looking. It's not a gig thing, right? He's looking for somebody to take on that hopefully will be full time, but he's willing to take 3 months of somebody who has experience, right?
I talk
Is the
to
way I
Lee once a
understand it.
week. I talk to Lee once a week. I know his mentality. It's similar to mine. He wants risk off the table. He wants go-getters.
Sure.
And this is the kind of market we are in right now. This is my whole point. And that's this book's point, which was written in 1996. All right, Miriam. As a site owner, how are you guys addressing employee retention and creating growth for your employees? Also, do you think recruiting agencies are worth it? I'll answer the
No.
last part. No.
Yeah, no.
Maybe for sponsors, but no. And
No,
if I worked
not in this, not even for sponsors, not
if
even
I
for
worked,
CROs.
yeah,
No.
see, Robert works there. If I worked at a sponsor, we would not work with recruiting agencies. I'd put myself in charge of that and we'd figure out something. No. Now, retention, this is where, as a site owner or director, you got to take off your owner hat and put yourself in their shoes. Lana's a good example. My employee. Lana, I know you want to work for all these other people. I'll help you do that. Just give me 2-3 years here. My whole thing is to figure out how long she wants to stay and then how much longer can I keep her beyond that period. Like that's the bonus time, right?
Well,
That's where I got to get creative.
And Dan, what about the fact that you send them for their nails? I mean,
The nails is a big
on.
part of it, man. Shout out to
Thank you.
Jenny. Jenny's given us so many hookups on those nails. That's part of it. What can we do to keep them there, the ones we really want? And then how could we help advance their career? And how do you actually have them see that you're not bullshitting?
Show appreciation. Show appreciation.
I mean, we got to put the human back in humanity first of all.
There you go.
Right? I mean, it's really that simple. There's just too much, barking of orders and this, that, and the other.
We've all worked for jerks, right? Whether it be female or males, except for maybe Dan. But the point is, these people, you don't want to work for them for any longer than you have to, right? And then you work for the people that treat you as a human being. They show appreciation. They take care of you. They're not too concerned. As long as you're honest with them, you show some loyalty to them, they'll take care of you, right? Those are good employers.
Yeah. Sandra says, can't depend on anyone and anything. It's kind of true. Lee says, Chris, with the FDA blacklisting countries, do you think they will reach a point where they are limiting the vertical integration of research?
So I'm not aware of how many countries are blacklisted, so I think it's all dependent upon that. I don't know.
I think China's almost blacklisted.
There's
now.
two. There's two that I can think of, right?
That's been. What are you talking about?
Right. So yeah, I don't think that's the case. But yeah, sure. If they went around and how many countries are there? 240 countries and said 238 can't do research, of course.
No, it's more like 5 can't do research, I think.
No, I understand. I could only think of 2, but
all right.
I don't
think
they're there.
They can all do research, and generally the safety data is acceptable to the FDA no matter where it's done.
Yeah, that was not the case with India for a while.
Well,
they wouldn't take anything from India.
Right. Understood. But I'm just saying,
I don't know if that changed.
It did.
I don't know if it changed or not, but like you can bet your bottom dollar efficacy data is there's no chance.
Yep.
But
anyway. And here's Ashley working hard. Speaking of a entrepreneur who's still working for a sponsor, she's out here promoting SOS conference.
She's like Robert though. She's self-employed too.
Yeah, both. And I think that's the answer. You do both.
Mm-hmm. If you have an employee, but let's be clear though.
Yeah.
If you have an employer who supports that, There's a lot of people out there where it's
Her
it's
last
not.
job, Ashley's
Yes,
last job.
Hey,
perfect example, right?
I'm gonna give props to the government that never does anything right. Did you know they're gonna outlaw
Wait,
that?
Chris is giving props to the government. Hold on.
Yeah, I hate the government in all capacity, but
I'm not
they're
affiliated with
actually
Chris'
doing.
comments.
I'm
Yeah,
not
he's always saying
affiliated.
that.
I'm exiting the
NSA,
thread.
please
But
remove
they're
me from Chris's
actually looking
inner
at
circle.
implementing a good law, in my opinion, right? Where there is no longer you cannot any longer have an employee sign a contract that they can non-compete contract.
Non-compete. Yep.
I actually think that's a great move by the
By the
government.
Biden administration. Give him props. That
No,
was
it's
them.
he just signs it. It's Congress that's
Give him props
implementing
for
that.
signing it, man. I'm trying to.
I don't think he signed it yet. I don't know if it's
I
gone
can't give him props for anything. Okay,
right.
here. Miriam says, I highly recommend you attend the SOS conference. Or this
No, this
Ashley
is
saying to
Ashley.
Miriam.
Yeah.
I highly recommend you attend the SOS conference. We had a serious, in-depth breakdown of this with site personnel to speak on their perspective. Exactly. Me and Judy were on that with Katie and with Nick Fosil. An amazing and with Lucia Rodriguez. Shout out to her too.
Not my. I mean, you can
Miriam,
be successful anywhere.
Yeah.
You can be successful anywhere, but why create a headache for yourself?
Do you think it's worth starting sites in research dense cities such as Miami, New York, etc.?
Not Miami.
No, don't do that.
Let me give you a hint, Miriam. I just talked to a site today wanting to start in Miami, and I talked to one yesterday. So it's literally like 2 or 3 sites a week I talk to.
And I talked to one yesterday in Tampa.
And let me give you a sponsor perspective. I don't even want to touch Florida.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about Tampa?
10% are like that. Florida.
West Coast. The West Coast of Florida is much less saturated, but the East Coast, Central, Southern Florida. I mean, my gosh, it is so overly saturated.
Yep.
It's absurd. Yeah, and you literally just cannot separate out.
New York is 10 times better than Miami, but New York's got a lot of competition too.
LA too, SoCal's.
But I would pick either of those over Miami.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, me personally, I would relocate to a place that's rural, that doesn't have any representation.
But
that's going to set yourself up.
Not too far from an airport.
Yeah, within reasonable distance from a regional airport. At least even if you have to take a connection
within
an hour. Within an hour. Yeah, then you're in a good space.
Yuma's in that kind of location. Ashley says, I agree, Chris. I was a psychometric rater, and all of a sudden recruiters are asking for my experience. Thank you. Somebody who, this is Sandra, I guess. Oh, no, this is someone telling Sandra. So if you are someone educated with masters or above, you could be a psychometric rater. We're hiring. You have to be local to Yuma. We have a PhD who does our psychometric stuff. Shout out to Susan Harris. And then Jaime. We'll keep in mind, it says Mayor, these comments, we gotta just go through these real quick. Beyond just compensation, I think creating a positive work environment is key. A culture of gratitude, opportunities, I think that's good. Flexibility can make all the difference for W2. We try to do all that stuff with our site. Look, our coordinators, after a year in, they get poached. People at recruiters are thirsty. They're in their inbox.
Thirsty.
What's the best employee? What's the best candidate to a recruiter? Somebody that's been out of work for 2 years or somebody currently working somewhere?
Sure.
They're after them. There are jobs being created. There is hiring going on. Here's a quote from a LinkedIn user who's unknown. Quotes an unknown. It might as well be them. Fears are stories we tell ourselves. Chris, do you agree with this?
Yeah, for the most part.
Chris doesn't like that quote. I could.
Yeah, for me, it's fear isn't a problem for me. It's something else. Negative. Robert? More negative.
Yeah, I mean, they are stories you tell yourself. Yeah, I agree with it.
Okay. Too rigid as well said. Fears are stories we tell ourselves. Sandra. Curious, has your social media footprint made it easier to build sponsor relations and getting trials, or have you found it to ever work against you? We should ask Robert. So I think it's a slight net positive, probably not as much as people think.
So Robert is going to be unable to talk because he's starving. Just FYI, Dan.
Robert, you got to help me answer this one.
For
gave
me,
a study.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, you're probably net positive in the sense that, you've built a good brand. You do know your stuff from a site perspective. So if a sponsor or CRO is looking to engage Yuma Clinical Trials, there is some level of confidence that you have an expectation to kind of fulfill, Dan. So maybe there's a little bit more pressure on your shoulders to perform versus somebody else because your reputation is at stake. So I do think that, Dan's social media footprint has made it, I don't want to say easier.
I would.
But I think, okay, maybe then you find, I think it's been helpful would be the way that I would pose it.
Where helpful or easier, they kind of mean the same thing.
I mean, there's been cases where we haven't got studies and I just don't know about it.
Yeah, I think that's also the case.
I think it far outweighs the
there's
times
benefit
we get studies.
Sure, there's more benefit than there is problems.
But I will tell you, Robert, you're right, because when there's a monitor that we know they're going to be our monitor, usually the one that does the SIV is going to be your monitor. Mm-hmm. When they don't know me, I'm actually happy. Like, it's a sigh of relief. Like, a little less pressure. Like, okay, They don't know me. They don't watch the videos. They're going to get to know me because I'm going to interview them. But they don't know me, so I'm just like a normal.
Be forewarned if you're a CRA out there. And
the camera will get in your face.
And you go to Yuma, you're in trouble.
The camera will go get in your face.
No, but Dan, honestly, I mean, I think some of that trickles down to your staff too. Like, there's a high level of expectation to perform because in the event Yuma Clinical Trials does not perform, like, one would argue is are you really the guru that you claim to be? But so I mean, I would say if I was you, I would feel an extra layer of pressure that probably other site owners don't feel. But on the other side, it has helped you, I believe, not made it easier. I disagree with Chris. Like, usually Chris and I don't disagree on many things, but I don't think it's made it easier. It's made it maybe easier in the context of, oh yeah, I've heard of him before. And, maybe that turns into being helpful. But at the end of the day, the facility has to be there. The skill set has to be there. The staff has to be there. The credentials have to be there. The PI, exactly. So all of that is really your brand and footprint has nothing to do with the feasibility aspect of whether or not you can conduct a trial for a certain protocol. So at the end of the day, I think it's a symbiotic relationship that you probably attribute to the successes that you've had with YCT specifically.
I'm going to save the time and give you plenty of examples of how it's helpful to him. But just trust me, it is.
But I said helpful, Chris. I said not easy.
Yeah.
I think those kind of mean the same thing.
It's net positive. There's extra pressure. Like, I'm happy. I'm relieved when I find out, they don't know who I am. They haven't mentioned anything. Usually in the email, they will. Like, I watched. That's your site. Looking forward to it. But when they don't mention that, I'm like, okay. And then they actually come and I'm like, they don't mention anything. I'm like, okay, they don't know me. This is actually like, I feel a little bit relief here. So there's some truth there.
I like the quote by Gandhi. I hadn't heard it before, and for the most part, I agree with that. Though fear does play a role that's helpful at times, but usually it's not helpful.
People are quoting Gandhi left and right. The enemy is fear. We think it is hate, but it is fear. This is Sandra. People want to be part of something where they make a real impact and are appreciated no matter the challenge. That's where the smaller sites have a major advantage. I agree. Do you think that's more based on the individual? I do agree. We know plenty of small sites. Chris, we don't have to go far in our Rolodex. For those of you young people, it's basically a book where you wrote numbers and it spins.
Ashley, do you know what a Rolodex is?
Ashley is on the cusp. She's on the cusp of knowing what's a Rolodex. There is no loyalty anymore. Wait, we got to
we're replaying through everything, yeah.
Don't call us out like that. We are so behind on these comments. We got to get through majority or
You got
inclusivity.
3 minutes. He's got to go or he's going to pass out.
Look at I'm scrolling through these comments. It's insane, guys. We can keep going on a little, Chris. Robert,
All right,
you got to
Guru
drop,
Nation.
man.
Yeah, I gotta go. I
Everybody
appreciate
connect
you.
with Robert.
Yeah.
His LinkedIn will
All right,
be
Robert.
underneath
Have
this
a good
video
night.
and in the show
All
notes.
right, guys.
Robert,
Guru
adios,
Nation,
man.
adios.
We'll have another shot. We got to get through some of these comments, Chris. But it's been a lively.
Yeah, I like it when people actually have a conversation, or conversational, I should say.
Mm-hmm. The challenges of middle management are a lot like a game many of us played, Piggy in the Middle.
Nice.
It's kind of true. I don't think I would make a good middle manager. The first 2 years they jump into the profession, so it would not be a surprise that they graduated with medical knowledge. Sandra is the one with 1.5 years since I've worked. Sandra, Lee Eifler. This is where we make love connections.
Are you near
on Guru
Phoenix,
After Dark?
Sandra?
Sandra, if you're near Phoenix, or even if you're not,
yeah, he can make arrangements for you in Michigan too, I believe.
Holler at this dude. Look what he's. I just picked a random comment of his. I have a high volume study, and I can do a 3-month contract. Lee Eifler's inbox is gonna get blown up. Then they can move on. I know someone else who works at Lee's site. Shout out to Daisy Villanueva. She used to work at YCT before doing a couple of stints in different hospitals. I'm looking at these comments. It's a intimidating mountain to climb. But are you with me still, or Chris, or
Are we trying to climb Everest here, or what?
it's not quite Everest. Let's go through some more. I was a contract CRA for many years before going to medical writing. See, that's a generalist going to specialist, but now they have another tool in their tool belt. Shout out to Helen. We had her on the podcast before. Care Access is starting to create new roles for travel CRCs. They have, there's like a new business model of a site.
It's not actually
salaries,
a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea. Salaries in Mexico are much lower, so I think investing in multi-therapeutic research centers in Mexico is extremely profitable. I agree. The problem with Mexico is if you're not living there, let's just say it's not like the United States when it comes to securing your business. I do think having like an informational type of business, like a CRO that doesn't really own anything brick and mortar, but contracts people, might be better. That's the route I would go. Latinos in clinical research are exploring similar things with Ashley. Ashley's one of the key members. SOS session topic, I agree. Kelvin says, Lee, have a high backlog in feasibility and study startup tasks. I can help. See, people are connected. Chris, we are in the gig economy. Look, this
Already,
comment here. Is this not a gig economy type of comment?
Well, of course, if that's what Lee
You didn't ask for a W-2 job.
Sure,
This is what I
if
do,
that's what
man.
Lee needs,
Exactly.
it can be helpful.
Damn, I'd come join y'all for free nails. Shout out to Jenny. Chris, you haven't met Jenny, huh?
I haven't.
I need my nails done too, Ashley. Anytime you come out here, we gotta have a minority stake in Jenny's nail salon. I think that would make regulatory approval pathways more difficult.
What, getting your nails done?
No, we're like so behind on comments. Splendid. Yeah, I think that's. Look, you have closing thoughts because this is gonna. Guru Nation, you've been lively. Thank you so much.
It was very good. Hopefully, it's like this more often.
Yeah, it's engaged crowd.
We need to get to the comments a little more regularly, though. It would appear.
We have been. I mean, we've been getting to everyone. But anything else, like closing statements? Are you looking forward to your book? I'm going to send this to you soon. Will you actually read this?
That's what I was just going to say. I was just going to answer.
Answers only.
Of course, I don't know. That's the true answer. I am so behind on reading. I have like 4 books that I've purchased I have yet to read.
This needs to go to the top.
Top? All right.
Anyone out of a job, if you haven't read this one already, this one's first. If you already read this one,
well,
I'd probably put this one next.
Sure, if you're a project manager, you don't need to read the book that Dan and I wrote.
No, you still do. They don't
You
know
do.
the first thing about sites at the practical level. They know like their forms that they fill out. They don't know. Yeah, no, they need to read it.
Okay, fair enough.
And look, the thickness, right, doesn't compare. Like you can finish this one in a day or two.
Which type is larger? I would assume it's an ours.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have at least double the book in your left hand.
Or you can get the audiobook. Our audiobook's 11 hours. This audiobook is 20 hours.
Double the book.
There you go. All right. What else? I got my first job because of that book. There you go, Kelvin. Thank
very
you.
nice. Thank you, Kelvin.
Thank you, man. You couldn't have a better review in real time than this one. Kelvin, anytime you want to come on the pod with me or Chris, let me know. Shout out to the SOS live stream this Friday. Chris, is it on your calendar, man? You got to be there.
It is.
Matter of fact, you're the host.
Am I? Is it a StreamYard? I guess it is. That's what.
Do you have your password?
That's going to be another fun.
Or is it your face?
No, it's been a month, so it's going to take a while to figure all this out. It's 2
Chris,
o'clock.
Please.
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock on Friday. I'll be at the clinic.
PST.
2 o'clock PST. For you East Coast elitists, that is 5 p.m. Darshan is one of the biggest culprits of East Coast time elitism. Don't forget it's an audiobook. Yes, the audiobook was very fun. Everything clinical research fit in that little book. Everything that you need to go explore further.
From a site perspective.
No, for CRO2.
It's mainly targeted, at least in my opinion.
Site level dynamics. Man, it's been a while. Site level dynamics. CRO level dynamics.
Sure, but a lot of that CRO stuff plays into the site.
Yeah, like when it comes to CRO stuff, it is monitoring, site selection, site initiation, interim. It's not the tech stuff. CRO, sponsor dynamics, chapter 6, and then job. So it does, but it really is meant to tell you where to go, look further. Like it's for the people that don't know what they don't know. That's what it's for.
I agree with that.
I'm planning to open a multi-therapeutic site in Mexico looking for investors. The site will be ready by December. Message me. If nothing else, we'll do a podcast with Latinos in clinical research. See? Mexico's booming, guys. I'll take the book if Chris doesn't want it. That's what Sandra said.
I see that.
Chris will let you know.
No,
okay.
I'll take it. I'll read the first chapter, and then I'll send it to you if I don't like it. How about that, Sandra?
Like we said, you'll like it. Okay, yeah. Oh, like those hipster places. Read it and pass it on. So I'll give it to you. You pass it to Sandra, right? And then Sandra, you got to pass it to someone else.
I have a neighbor 5 houses down. She has this house thing.
Leave a book, take a book.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Don't put it there. Give it to Sandra. It's a virtual one. You got to pay a little for the FedEx, but
there you go.
Give it to her. I'm going to end it on the song, Guru Nation. Have a good one.